Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. Today we are going to take on the mighty Critical Role and their influences on the D&D world. What we think they do great, because credit where credit is due. Nobody takes down a monster without first understanding how powerful they are, and why we don't like some of the things they do, or what their influences have, and how negative things can be, or how we perceive them to be here. Please give us a like, share, and subscribe, because we are new. Those impact us greatly. They mean so much to us. Without further ado, let's get ready to go for the throat. So credit where credit's due. I am a fan of Critical Role. I think they are incredible at what they do. But first and foremost, what they do is they put on a show. They are actors. They are very, very, very good at improv. They dedicate countless hours into creating these characters, the backstories, their nuances, the way they talk, the way they move about the world. They do an incredible job of doing that, and they are very accomplished because of it. One of the things that they do that is great, and I really hope that a lot of DMs, if there's only one thing you take from Critical Role, it's that you take into the characters' backstories and incorporate them into the actual plots of the story, and give them that opportunity to see and develop the backstories, so that way they can develop these resources and connections with these other players. It's incredible. I think it's awesome. I think it works well in all scenarios. You want to make your modules that you're running better or feel more personable, do those. Get your characters or your players to create their backstories and get it to you ahead of time, so you can start adding them into the story, maybe combining some of them. It's a very cool thing. It really shows a connection between the DM and the player, and that's one of the things that they do that's really incredible. One of the other things that they do is they really bring the role play up to the forefront. And this is one of those things that's like, it's great because of how they do it, and they're putting on a show. Remember, they're working. This is their job. They built a studio specifically just for this. They Twitch stream their games live, and then they rerun them on YouTube and whatever other formats they might be on. So what we're going to get into in depth about is what their role-playing aspects have done to the rest of the community. Full disclosure, Taliesin Jaffe is one of my favorite players on Critical Role. I love the way he incorporates such emotion behind his characters. I like the way that he makes them so distinctively different from each other, and you really get a feel of who those characters are almost right off the bat. You get this, like, just the way he uses his voice. I think it's incredible. I like that he plays a lot of different characters, like they jump around from alignment and what they do, and it's a very cool creative player that he is, and I have a lot of respect for that, and I really appreciate his characters. The problem is when you're new and you don't know how to play the game, and you get into it because you see Critical Role, it builds this extremely high level of play that most people will never ever achieve. Don't get me wrong, I am nowhere near there, even though I tried desperately hard to be. And we've talked about this earlier in our very first video, where we talk about social disorders and being involved in groups and how that affects you, especially in things like anxiety and pressure. This is why the Mercer Affect is so it's like a real thing, because people build this anxiety, and they see how other people played it like this, and it's difficult for them to feel like they can compete, or that other people will enjoy the game as much, especially if they have seen these things before. It's not the fault of Critical Role, to be fair, but it is an influence that affects gameplay, and it affects people with these disorders, especially if you're someone that's new, is trying to do something that you can get at least part of your voice out there, or at least maybe help yourself with some sort of other issues that you might be suffering, and you've decided to take a chance on this game, which I urge everyone to do anyway. This might make things harder for you than they have to be. Because you don't have to role play. You don't have to be at that level. Everyone on that table is playing at a level of role play that most people that are it's not going to happen. Like, you're never going to have like that big of a group full on doing voices, full on in character, letting the character run free through them, because you need training, you need practice, you need acting techniques to do that. And that's not what we are. That's not who anyone mostly is that plays this game. So it puts this unfair expectation, and it makes things very, very difficult. And I know I'm going to cover social disorders in D&D and why it's a benefit to play this game soon. I really am. It's just there's a lot of information I need to dive into in order to get that facts straight and presented correctly. But it puts this expectation. It makes it very hard for newer players to kind of live up to that, or even existing players who are now playing with newer people who knew that or who have grown into the game because of seeing that. And it's huge, the impact they have. And that's really our big problem, is that they impact the D&D world. So the map Mercer Affect is one thing. It's an unfair difficulty, but we do that ourselves. We see these other players and these other DMs, these other channels, these other streamers that are not Critical Role, that are also almost competing with them in a way, and we see them playing the game, and we deep down we want part of that. We want that like deep moment when like characters just fall in love or die or they reach that pinnacle of who they are, and it causes this transcendent moment. We want all that. We love all that. That's why a lot of us are role play heavy characters. But that expectation that we put on ourselves, that is the result of the map Mercer Affect. They're just great, and it's not fair that they have to be shackled down so negatively because of that. It is. But what they are responsible for is the impact that they have on the D&D community. Now, they're coming out with a book, Tal'Darai Reborn. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to come out. It's probably going to come out later this year, so towards the end of 2021. And they have done out other books before, and they even got Explorer's Guide to Wildmount done official content for Wizards of the Coast D&D. And don't get me wrong, it was a great book. It added some very cool features and a whole new world that you can actually build and make characters for and build your own stories and everything from that. And it's cool, it is, don't get me wrong, but the problem is that you're now taking Dungeons and Dragons and you're taking Critical Role, which wouldn't exist without Dungeons and Dragons. And, it is what it is. And you're melding them to one, and it stops being the singular entity and starts becoming the combination of the both. And because Critical Role is a show, it's a live stream, these things, they have a cycle that they're up and they're down, but when the influence comes so greatly from Critical Role, and it grows and it grows and it so heavily impacts what Wizards of the Coast does and what D&D ends up becoming, it's hard to ignore their importance and their influence. If they start deciding that they're just going to ignore a certain set of rules for whatever reason, just because they feel like that's how it works in their homebrew, it's going to reflect in the community because they are going to start doing those things. And then Wizards of the Coast is now going to have to really address that. They're going to have to understand that, and they're going to have to make those changes in order to satisfy those people, in order to maintain the appreciation and love. Because if Dungeons and Dragons ends up becoming a newer format, or 6th edition comes out and things change dramatically, if Critical Role decides to go to Pathfinder, that changes what happens to Dungeons and Dragons, because now you have all these people that were big fans and that were like just eating up all this content and just staying abreast of it because of Critical Role, are now jumping ship to another platform. It changes, and that scares companies, and that it puts us in a situation that's like, what if things end up going really bad? You can lose because influences change for the sake of the show. So here's where the company has the issue. They have to maintain their own identity separate from Critical Role. And with Critical Role's growing success, they managed to produce an anime that's with stretch goals on Kickstarter in a week almost. Like it was almost like record breaking how fast that they did it. But to have that kind of a force behind you as a fan base, and to keep growing, and now with Tal'Darai Reborn coming out, and it's going to be a big book for them, it is going to greatly increase their value as an entity and as a show, and they're only going to get bigger and bigger from there. If they do the whole first campaign as an anime, that's going to be huge for them. And then they're starting to produce their own animes. You know what I mean? Like it's incredible what they can achieve, and it's very respectable. And credit where credit's due. They've earned it. They put a lot of work and effort into it. But the company is going to be beholden to that in some way, shape, or form, and that it's not the right situation to be in. Because if things change, if they decide to start using another format, or they jump to like Pathfinder, then they face a big issue that the Wizards of the Coast has now. Now Critical Role doesn't even use them, so anything new that they come out is not going to benefit them. So now they got to start starting again to build up the same community, because it's a little different when people follow a specific group as opposed to following a specific brand. You know, it's a little bit businessy, and I'm sorry to get like that, but it's a fact that people have to understand. So credit where credit's due. I wish them all the success. Again, I love the players. I love those stories that they create. I love how they do their thing. But I really, really hope that they maintain a nice, respectable distance where they are just third-party influencers and not like direct influencers of Wizards of the Coast. And that's where the trouble's going to be. Okay, lastly, this is just something I really need to get off my chest, because being a Sinister Hero, we are not morally good characters usually. A lot of us are bad guys trying to make our way through, or maybe we're trying to end the game or fight the big bad because we want that power for ourselves, and we want to be the tyrant, or we want to accumulate these powerful artifacts for darker reasons. Critical Role doesn't really have any of that. Percy was like a pretty evil guy, but you know what? He was still part of this adventuring party, and they were all pretty good people. Like, there isn't as much evil and darkness in them that is reflective as them being evil, but more so as them coming from a dark place. And that's fine. That's a common trope. A lot of us use it. A lot of us make edgy characters. That's who we are. But they're like, I would love to see them do something like real. Like, I'm currently in a party, and yeah, there's a chance I might have killed some of my party members' families during a raid before the campaign started. It came out in the talks with the DM when we were creating characters and discussing things, and it became a cool hook. Haven't really fully explored that yet, but that's not anything you'll ever see in Critical Role. And probably not anything you should ever see in your normal games anyway. But again, we do things a little different here. We like that scary thing, because once that comes out, oh, is it going to be good? It's going to feel great. And yeah, I might not make it through that conversation, but you know, like, that's something that's fun that we happen to do here. Not everybody does that. Not everybody allows evil characters in their game. We love it. We thrive on it. It's fun. It's exciting. I like being evil characters. And yeah, you know, it's a cool thing. I would love to see them do that dynamic, but I don't think they ever will, because they're basically a cookie cutter D&D group. Like, that's just who they are. If you look at an adventure set, that's kind of how they play it. They're both basically all morally good, or at least neutral, leaning that way, you know, or they don't really act out on dangerously dark ambitions, you know, like, they're not like that, and they don't play like that, so a lot of their adventures kind of reflect that, and that's the thing that it like, I really wish they would just get into it. Like, if they just really, really, really brought that out and were really just like that, or at least some of their characters incorporated that into their backstories or who they were, I think that would definitely lift them up. I think that would make me a diehard fan as opposed to just a regular fan. But I think a lot of that is missing from basically the public view, because it's not popular and it's hard to do, and you got to be smart about it. And you know, I've talked about this before in the other videos about them, but they don't do that. They're very cookie cutter. They're very oh, we're good, so we're gonna save the world because it's just the right thing to do. And it'd be funner for me personally if you were doing it because you wanted the power to destroy it, and you could use that for your benefit. You know, and occasionally here and there you get characters that do something, or that make a dark pact with someone and follow an evil deity, but ultimately they are still good, and it's very, very commonplace for what a D&D adventure should be by the book, as far as what you're expecting. It'd be nice if they brought it more adult, or really pushed the envelope a little and maybe made it a little darker, but that's not who they are. That's not something they do. It'd be great, and that's just, I mean, push yourself, guys. I have no reason to be talking to them like this whatsoever, because they could just crush me in a second. but again, you know, I really hope that people understand that there has to be a distance between the two of them. Otherwise, we might lose what's great about the game and only gain what's great about Critical Role. And just, again, thanks for giving a Spooky Kid a chance. Please tune in next week.